pressing down and it hurts inside. We gotta take a stand, it don't help to hide. If you hurt my friends, then you pressing down.
U.S. Army Sergeant retired. Just shout out to everybody in the Keith Andrew Network. July happens to be Military Appreciation Month, so I would like to wish you all a happy Military Appreciation Month, and of course, happy birthday to America from the 4th of July.
And it hurts inside. We gotta take a stand, it don't help to hide. If you hurt my friends, then you hurt my pride. I gotta be a man, I can't let it slide. I am a real American. Fight for what's right, fight for your life.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Keith Andrew. That's right, the Keith Andrew Network, available on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all social medias. If you're watching, make sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment for me and the guests. We would love to interact with you. Or if you have ideas who I should interview next. Today, first off, I'm going to start off with is thank you for your service. And you already introduced yourself with the introduction. So with that being said, we're going to start off with icebreakers. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you, Keith. I'm excited to be here. My name is Jennifer Brande, and I am in my mid-40s, living in Miami, Florida, with my U.S. Marine Corps disabled husband, Howie, who is a filmmaker. And right now, we are both presently full-time students going to school. I attend Florida International University in Miami, Florida, and I am majoring in hospitality management with a focus on entertainment management.
No, absolutely. Like I said, there's so many great questions. I'm just looking at your profile. I wrote down some good ones, and you can ask me anything. But first thing I want to ask is, why are you living in Florida? And how are you dealing with the alligators and anacondas?
Well, you know, it's really funny. I've actually lived in New York and Washington, D.C. for several years, and I thought all the snakes were in D.C. I learned otherwise when we moved to Miami. It'll be 5 years this year on New Year's Day, and so Florida came calling because of a job offer. The United States Army was looking to fill a particular position, and a friend of mine who lives down here was like, "You got to apply for this. Come, I want you to come. I want you guys to come live in Florida." So I applied with the full intention that I wasn't going to get selected for the job, and then surprise, I did. So my husband and I packed up our cars, and on the 1st of January 2020, we moved down via the auto train from DC to Miami, and we've been here since. The first couple of years were a little difficult because, of course, COVID started just a couple months after we got here. So we didn't really get to see much of South Florida the first couple of years, just because we were all scared to go outside and really be around people. So but I worked really hard. My husband was working hard. And honestly, part of it was also for medical reasons. I have a health condition that doesn't really like cold weather. So the idea of South Florida, where the coldest it gets is maybe in the 60s or 70s in the winter, was very amenable to us. So that's one of the big reasons we moved down here.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next one I'm going to ask you, so pretty much these questions are like acting questions, but what's cool about it is I can take acting out and replace it with anything else. I know if hey, it's like, hey, Keith, you've been doing this for many years. Why are you still reading off a card? And sometimes
cards, please.
So I'm going to ask you this question, but it covers your acting. It also covers your time in the Army and the military. Pardon my disability. So the question.
It's okay.
The question I want to ask you, it's going to cover your acting, your time in the Army, and the Navy. So the question I want to ask you, without beating around the bush, is what attracted you to begin your career as an actress?
So for me, um, did you say actress or my military?
Well, that covers everything. So instead of repeating the question 3 times, it's the same
Oh, okay.
question, but what attract
Okay.
for the hell of it, I'm just gonna say it. What attracted you to become an actress? What attracted you to join the Army? And what attracted you to join the Navy? See, it sounds redundant when you repeat it over and over.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So for me, joining the military, um, it was definitely a left turn, according to my mother, because I grew up in a household where parents burned bras and draft cards and were very, very anti-war, not very pro-military. And after I graduated high school, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. So I traveled for a bit and I had a really good time traveling. And I came back and I was like, okay, I'm really unfulfilled. What can I do in my life? And so the fact that when I was in high school, I just went and took the Armed Forces Placement Exam, the ASVAB, and I actually scored really high on it. You know, it kind of just came out to me for some idea that I was like, you know what? People in the military travel and they I think they get paid to do it. So it sounded pretty cool at the time. So I went down and I talked to a recruiter. And originally I was actually going to go into the U.S. Marine Corps. But they just were not super flexible with the time scheduling and everything. So I ended up later on just joining the U.S. Army as my backup. And I spent about 12 years, I spent a little over 12 years in the Army before I was medically retired because I got messed up in Iraq. But later on in life, I ended up going to work for the Navy as a civilian for the federal government. And so I was working at a joint Navy Air Force base in Washington, D.C., called Joint Base Anacostia Bowling. And I was working in the public affairs shop because that's what I did in the military. And it was really easy to get hired into public affairs jobs after you've done it in the military. So I worked at Joint Base Anacostia Bowling, and one morning, my former boss, walked in and quit. So it was a really pressure intense week. It happened to be the week of the 100th centennial of the Air Force Base being named. And so we had a parade and we had a dinner and a banquet and we had a whole bunch of stuff going on. So I really loved my time working for the Navy as well as the Air Force and of course the Army. But it was just very easy for me to kind of build off of my military career. So um that's why I did that. But for me as an actress, um I actually acted in plays when I was growing up, and I really enjoyed acting and getting in front of a camera or getting in front of a crowd of people and just playing a part. And so I got really excited about that, and I wanted to keep that going. Um, During high school, I did a little bit of it, but then when after I graduated high school, I really didn't have an outlet to do it so much. So it kind of fell by the wayside for a little while. And then um, back in my days in DC, I actually ended up in school for photography and film. And I actually interned on the set of an independent film that was a short. It was only about 10 minutes. And for 5 days, I got to go drive around Maryland and I made props. I acted a little bit. I did a little bit of production assistant, and it was a lot of fun, and I really loved it. It was an awesome experience. And I said, okay, I definitely have to keep this in my life somehow. So later on in my life, I just kept looking, and I was like, what's an opportunity for me? And then one day it hit me. I was going to sit there watching TV and a travel show came on, which I happen to love travel shows because I love travel. And it was so annoying to me watching a travel show on TV that literally showed this $10,000 a night resort in Bora Bora that I know we would never be able to afford to go to. So I was really kind of annoyed by this. And so I said, okay, I want a TV show that talks about travel for the not 1%, the not super wealthy of the world, because we all deserve to go on vacations and take a break and get away. And so that's how I created my travel show that I'm still building at this point called WTF Where's the Fun? And it focuses on travel, activities, and discounts and things to do for people who like myself, you, anybody who out there who happens to have um physical limitations. You know, you can't do things like everybody else. You can still do stuff. I actually was able to do a lot of research. I actually found adaptive scuba diving for people like me who we have devices implanted. I can't go down and do like deep sea diving and things like that, but they have an adaptive version of it. And right now I'm volunteering with a nonprofit that does adaptive sailing. And the CEO happens to be quadriplegic, and he gets out there, he just hops off of his wheelchair into the sailboat and off we go, just sailing around Biscayne Bay, which is pretty amazing. I mean, it's pretty nice having all that beautiful natural ecosystem and habitat
Oh,
in the backyard.
he is a stronger person than I would. I would never want to live like that.
I marvel at him all the time. Actually, one of my projects right now, because I'm volunteering for school, I'm putting together a first ever Veterans Day regatta. And it's going to probably be about 20, anywhere from 25 to 100 people that are going to get together out. They're veterans and they're going to go out and have a regatta on Biscayne Bay. And so the idea that I have a fellow veteran who is 95 years old and on a walker, he's going to get to be able to be a part of this. It's pretty amazing. So the idea that, you know, just because you're older or you're not 100% doesn't mean you can't do stuff. So I'm trying to dispel that myth, and it's going to be really fun to do.
Well, you bring
Obviously,
up,
I work on my event management
but I didn't
skills.
mean to interrupt. I apologize.
No, you're fine.
You bring up a good point because you were in the Army and the Navy. I have interviewed people, but you might find interesting you want to work with. Even for all me, I'm not one of those people like don't talk to my friends, don't talk to anyone on my friends list. Go make your own friends. You want to talk to someone on my friends list, as long as you're professional, go right ahead. I'm not one of those other assholes that be like, no, go make your own friends. But the reason I
Oh
bring
God,
it up,
no.
and I bet you had
No,
people
that's
like that.
really exciting. I'm excited for that. So thank you for that opportunity. I mean, it's really frustrating because like growing up, I used to go to amusement parks and like go on the big slide and log flume and roller coasters. And now I can't do that stuff anymore. And so the fact that I happen to live in such a beautiful place that has all this wonderful opportunity to do things, keep us active, keep us happy and engaged, and show that we don't have to just sit and watch everybody else do all the cool stuff. So I'm very much of that mindset that we're going to fix that situation. So this is my small part in it. Um, so that's what I like. It's going to be exciting, and hopefully it'll lead to more opportunities in the future.
No, you're right. The other thing I was playing with a while ago is I
Yep.
know, thanks to you, I have a small group of people who have been in the Army and the Navy. Why not
Yep.
do an Army Navy episode? That would be pretty interesting. Would you like to be part of it?
Absolutely. And so it's really funny because my husband was a Marine. So technically he belongs to the Navy. So we used to have like Army Navy football game watch parties at our house in Virginia. We called it a house divided. We had the Army flag on one side, the Navy flag on the other side. My husband would get like fellow Marines and sailors to come over, and I would just stack the house with lots of Army and like When Navy scored a touchdown, we were all on the ground doing push-ups, and then the same thing with the Navy when the Army had scored. So we had a really good time. We used to make like drinks for the event, like the just like the Jarhead and see all these like military inspired drinks, and people just love that stuff. So we do miss doing that. It's a little harder to do down here in South Florida. So,
No,
but we
absolutely.
do. We love messing with each other, but there are brothers and sisters in ours. We all mess with each other, but in the end, we all work together as one team when it's important. So
I do
it
want
works.
to for my 2 cents on that. But when we come back from this commercial break, we're going to start off with the coronavirus when we come back from this commercial break. Now we're back from the quick commercial break. Now, before we get to the coronavirus, there's two things you mentioned earlier, but I wanted to talk to you about. If you don't mind me for asking, you said you were messed up when you were in the Army or Marines. In the
I was in
Army,
the Army. I was in the Army. My husband was a Marine. Yeah.
no disrespect. When you were in the
Yeah.
Army, were you, have you ever been in like a war zone? Because I do want to mention, I am curious what you mentioned when you said you were messed up.
Yeah. So I actually served in the U.S. Army, and I actually deployed with a very small, what's called military history detachment to Iraq. And it's kind of funny because I got selected to go to this special school. At the time, there were only 75 actually trained historians in the entire millions of people in the US Army. I got selected to go to that school. And the first day of class, I get a call from my reserve unit saying, "Hey, we're transferring you to this unit in New York because you're deploying in less than a month." And I was like, excuse me? So when I was selected for the school, there wasn't an intention that I was supposed to deploy initially from it. But unfortunately, in that unit, there was a third person who ended up getting hurt and wasn't able to deploy. So I get a call the first day of class, like, do well in class, because guess what? You're going to do this job in Iraq. And I think it was 4 weeks. So it was like the last week of January, and I was leaving on the 1st of March. So yeah, I got selected. I went through the school. I had 2 weeks, but we were planning our wedding. My husband and I were planning to get married that November in 2009, but unfortunately, for obvious reasons, that didn't happen. We went and did the county courthouse marriage thing, right under the Arlington County Courthouse, right down the street from the Pentagon and Arlington National Cemetery. So we got married, and then 2 weeks later, I left. I went to New York for 3 days, where I got to hang out with my new boss and soldier in Queens, New York. And then we went down to Georgia, then we went down to Mississippi to train up for deployment. And 2.5 weeks later, we were on a bird heading, well, actually, we took a bus initially from Mississippi to Atlanta Airport, and then we took the flight from Atlanta to Kuwait, and then Kuwait to Baghdad, Iraq, where, as historians, there were only 12 of us in country, and we all belonged to the four-star general in Baghdad, who was the late great General Raymond Odierno, who was really super wonderful, amazing leader, and awesome person. And sad he passed away. But our job was to go and move south to this southern city called Basra, which is about 10 kilometers west of the Iranian border, and it was really close to Kuwait. It was basically like the southernmost part of the country. And so we get there, we're doing our thing, and we're keeping ourselves busy, and it's a long year. And then 2 days before I was supposed to redeploy, there was an incoming round. So basically, somebody fired a rocket towards our base. Normally, when that happens, you go out and put you run out, you hear the sirens go off, and um again, you get down to the Um,
The bunker.
to the bunker. Yes, I apologize. TBI moment.
I
And
have that effect on people.
I doubt that. But getting in there and, just trying to relax and just wait it out and everything. Unfortunately, the night that this happened, it happened in the middle of the night, and either I was so tired because I had just finished editing, like a 1,400 page narrative of all of the work we had collected and done over the year. I fell asleep so hard, I either didn't hear the alarm go off, but by the time I finally heard stuff going on outside, they tell you if you can't get out to the bunker, you roll onto the floor and then you roll under the bed so that you're protected in case something does land. Well, I got to the floor part. Unfortunately, I didn't make it to the under the bed part because it impacted and it crushed this huge like cement wall called the T-wall, and it fell on my living quarters, which in turn knocked this wall locker onto me. So like it hit me here, and I don't remember, like, unfortunately, I don't remember leaving Iraq. I know I was in Kuwait for a period of time, and then I went to Germany. So I had seizures and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. So that's what happened to me. And then from Germany, I ended up going back to home at the time in Washington, D.C., and I got sent to Walter Reed. And so ironically enough, it was literally 1 year to the day of when I left was the day I got back to Walter Reed. So my husband came and met me and came to Walter Reed, and he saw me getting wheeled in. I don't remember much of it, unfortunately, but as I like to joke, I have crappy short-term memory and crappy short-term memory. So things that I've said even 5 minutes ago, I can't necessarily remember with clarity. And so, I've learned to find ways to work around that problem, but it still affects me. It's still a little hard these days, and I'm glad it's that if it had to happen, it happened now as opposed to in the past where people would probably have just, locked me up because I'm some crazy lady who can't remember things. So I'm very appreciative of modern medicine and people who can help with any kind of medical situation these days. So I'm very appreciative of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we took that break, you mentioned the competition between the Army and the Navy. You
Mhm.
reminded me of how, supposedly, I don't know if it's true or not, but makes a good conversation, how the NYPD officers fight with the fire department. I forgot their initials. So I'm supposed to be a New
Oh, the
Yorker, but
yeah, the NYFD and the NYPD. Yeah.
so isn't it like the same thing? Like, yeah, there's competition, but at the end of the day, we're all on the same team.
Yeah, exactly. Like 9/11 is a prime example, which is one of those things that, I mean, I don't talk about too much. Had I not joined the Army when I did, I would have been in Ground Zero on 9/11 because I used to go to the South Tower Mall because they had a little food court in there that wasn't far from where I used to work. And so I can actually say joining the Army saved my life, which is pretty kind of crazy when people hear that the first time. But yeah, no, when it comes in the end, it's like you had the New York Fire Department right there next to the New York Police Department, and actually some of those people were part of our higher overarching headquarters in New York, and we lost reservists because they were firefighters and policemen, and unfortunately went down in the towers, or they went down they got injured in World Trade Center 7. So it was really, there's a lot there. I take a lot of solace in the fact that like we all will mess with each other, but in the end, when it comes time to do the job, we all get together like that, and we're thick as thieves, and it's a wonderful feeling.
No, absolutely. And if there's anything you don't want to talk about, I do apologize.
No, 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 it's fine. That's totally fine. I mean, I only found out several years later that unfortunately I knew somebody on Flight 93. He was one of the people who rushed the cabin to stop the terrorists that I grew up with. And then in the Pentagon, I actually had a fellow soldier who I literally just left South Korea, which was my first duty station. We were up on the DMZ for a year, and her first week in the Pentagon was the week 9/11 happened, and she died. So like there's a lot to be said, but also because the military is fairly small, later on in life, I ended up working for Army Public Affairs in the Pentagon. And later on, so did my husband, which happens to be in the section where the plane went through. So it's there's a level of solemnity from everything, but it's also nice seeing the rebirth and that they don't let it just stop everything. It's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to cut you off, but we're going overtime right now. But we can actually say this conversation when we do the 10 minutes of overtime, only available on TikTok and Instagram. By wrapping up our interview segment, it was a real honor and privilege having you as a guest. I'm looking forward to part 2 down the road. And until we meet again, I'll catch you later. Thank you and have a good night.